Dark Skies is brought to us by the director of Legion and Priest. Dark Skies is the trailer that you probably saw and laughed more during than any comedy trailer of this or the previous year. Lots of funny moments in that trailer. So going into this movie, I wasn't terribly optimistic. It stars Keri Russell and some guy, I don't know who he is. Basically, it's a story of this family that live in this house and they got these kids and they're having some domestic problems. Their jobs aren't going too well. They're having a lot of fights. The kids are having weird experiences at night. Birds are flying into the house. All these weird things are happening. They're hearing noises and odd, strange sounds, and kids are getting stuff like written on their bodies and they don't know what's going on, and they begin to suspect aliens. Now, I really like alien stuff. I love the X-Files. I love the movie Signs. I love Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I love alien movies in which they're able to, in realistic ways, depict a suspenseful or frightening alien encounter of some kind where it doesn't get over the top and you actually start to believe it and it seems real. And I will say, this movie is not as bad as it looked. I will say that. Is it good? Not really, but it is not quite as bad as I thought it was going to be. It does have some suspenseful scenes. It has some good tension in there at times. And Keri Russell ain't bad in the movie. She was giving a lot to her role. I could tell she was trying to, in some way, lend some credence to this movie and actually give it some believability. And she did a pretty good job in this movie. Her husband, I'm not exactly sure the actor's name, he was really overly serious in this movie. And I mean to the point where, like, some scenes you're like, dude, stop bulging your eyes out so much. Like, his kid was talking to him and he was just like, I was like, dude, you know, tone it down a little bit. Now, the problem with this movie is it's so silly. It unfortunately starts to stray into the more comedic category at times. The way the script is written, the dialogue between the characters and everything, it just comes off so forced and unreal and silly, and it starts to get cheesy. And so when the scares happen, it gets a little funny because you aren't that invested in these people because the script just isn't that up to par with the directing. And it's written and directed by the same guy. He's definitely a better director than he is writer. Because I will honestly say, there are legitimate scenes in this film that are scary. And not always just because of extremely loud music, which unfortunately does happen quite often in this movie. More often I was just on edge at the thought of a loud boom unsettling me because the freaking sound effects are just so, like, ear-piercingly loud. You're obviously going to be startled by quiet and then all of a sudden just BAH! It's in your face. It's, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not scary. There are a few scenes though in this movie where I felt legitimate tension, but for the most part, as the movie progresses, I started to see that it was really just a giant copy off of a lot of better movies. There are humongous portions in this movie that are just a blatant ripoff of Signs. I mean, they board up their house. They have like a big Last Supper. They're telling stories about when they were young and trying to make the kids laugh, just like in Signs. And you see the little shadows through the boards. And I was like, this is really copying off of Signs, like, a lot. Don't mess with my Signs, man. That movie inspired me a lot. I understand if you don't like Signs as much as I do. That movie just came at the right time for me, and it was the first movie I saw that truly got me into the idea of filmmaking and film criticism, actually. So I owe a lot to Signs, which is why I have a poster for it right there. So when I see a movie that kind of blatantly copies off of it in a lot of ways, it's kind of offensive to me. It also copies a bit off Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and believe it or not, the X-Files. And I know that it's difficult to tell an alien invasion tale of this type, like a family abduction tale, without going for all the tropes that the X-Files has covered 1,000 times over. See, I'm a huge X-Files fan as well. If you can't tell, that's the poster from Mulder's office, I want to believe. And so when I see these movies, I can recognize, like, obviously these people were inspired by these previous films or TV series. It just comes off so not real and Hollywoodized and fake and set up in this nice glossy production, and you just don't really get that real sense that movies like Close Encounters or Signs or the television show The X-Files gave. Also, when these things eventually do show up, the CGI is awful. It's not good, and you can just really tell that it is fake. This is the kind of scary movie where, like, there's all these weird sound effects and noises that pop up and facial expressions and stuff. Like, the wife is walking up and the husband just goes it's like that. Dark Skies is a silly, cheesy film that actually does have a few scary scenes that were legitimately disturbing. a good central performance, but terrible dialogue really, and it just gets really over the top, and the CGI just doesn't work, and you can tell that it's copying off of other things that were much better. So for that reason, I'm going to give Dark Skies a C. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and as always, if you like this, then you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.